I count on the loving help of my darling wife, Camilla.
Tears rolled down Camilla's face as the unthinkable happened. At a royal gala, her full title was dropped, introduced only as Duchess, not Queen, in front of cameras, guests, and global viewers. Her smile faded. Voice trembled. The blow wasn't loud, but it was deliberate. Behind it all, Princess Anne, calm, calculated, and done waiting. "You crowned her queen," Anne told Charles. "I crown tradition." This wasn't a mistake. It was a message. Camilla's reign just cracked, and everyone saw it live. Public humiliation unfolds. Princess Anne stepped onto the stage at the royal gala, poised and silent. The ushers followed protocol, but something felt off. As Camilla was introduced, the announcement simply said, "Duchess," omitting her queen consort title. No stutter, no explanation, just omission. The effect was electric. Camilla's face shifted, mask faltered, eyes sidelong. Her voice shook as she responded. The audience noticed. Cameras froze on that moment. Social media lit up. "She looked stunned," one guest whispered. In a split second, a private protocol decision became a public spectacle. That silent hint of humiliation triggered a ripple. Press photographers zoomed in on Camilla's trembling smile, and the caption section exploded. Clips circulated. Her voice broke on the title. Viewers saw it in real time. One social media user posted, "A queen reduced to Duchess, live on screen." Comments poured in. Some criticized the oversight as disrespectful. Others speculated it was no accident. Tabloids called it a historic slight. The monarchy, long protected by ritual and tradition, suddenly looked brittle on live television. For Camilla, the moment hit hard. Title and status carry weight in royal life. When omitted publicly, even subtly, it becomes a signal. "It wasn't a slip," wrote a royal reporter. "It was a statement." At that event, protocol spoke louder than ceremony. Camilla's reaction, from shock to composure, revealed more than any speech could. The question on everyone's lips became, was this a careless mistake or a calculated move? The public's gasp was palpable. Royal watchers debated. Was it a minor gaffe or a warning shot? And for Camilla, it was both humiliation and reckoning. In one moment, a woman who had journeyed from scandal to queen consort found herself publicly diminished. "It felt like history unfolding in real time," one source later said. The title wasn't just words, it was power. And it was taken, on camera, before the world. That moment of public erasure didn't come out of nowhere. Inside the palace, Princess Anne had been building momentum for months, quietly redrawing lines of authority. Known for her loyalty to royal tradition, she saw this gala as a stage, and the title slip as a tool. Now we step into the world of Anne's quiet influence. How long had she been preparing this move? Why did she choose this moment? And how does her sense of duty shape her action? Princess Anne's quiet power. Princess Anne has always been the palace's silent sentinel, steady, disciplined, unwavering. Daughter of the sovereign, she holds tradition like a compass. In recent months, insiders heard whispers of tension, protocol re-examined, royal pecking order questioned. Anne didn't make a fuss. She didn't call meetings. She just began ensuring rules were followed, lines redrawn. She wasn't angry, one aide explained. She was determined. For Anne, duty to the crown outweighs personal ties. Anne's involvement wasn't accidental. She's the monarchy's tradition keeper, having served in uniform, purpose, and public duty for decades. When Camilla began pushing boundaries, seating her family close, altering ceremonial roles, Anne took note. She didn't intervene with loud confrontation. Instead, she tracked protocol breaches, gathered evidence, and waited. Anne moved in silence, confirmed a royal source. She would only act when precision mattered. And tonight, it did. Her backstage power was surgical. Without fanfare, she authorized the title omission. No grand announcements, no press briefings. Just hush, protocol, procedure. And when the gala host complied, it was as if the palace had spoken. She revoked it without drama, said a communications insider. It was pure precision, and precisely her style. For Anne, public image isn't emotion, it's structure. And no royal image is bigger than the crown. This wasn't Anne flexing authority. It was an expression of conviction. She acted not in spite, but in defense of the institution, a courtier said. To her, role equals rule. Remove special treatment. Enforce legacy. The hint of tension in Camilla's eyes wasn't drama. It was the cost of breaking protocol. Anne didn't triumph. She safeguarded. And in that moment, she reminded the palace and the public that tradition isn't optional. It's foundational. Now, let's go below the surface. Camilla didn't come to royal life quietly. Her rise was deliberate, driven by decades of pushing influence, shifting protocol, and reshaping tradition. But where Anne saw danger, Camilla saw progress. Now, with Anne's hand guiding events, the fault lines beneath Camilla's bold moves are exposed. It's time to examine the Queen Consort's calculated ascent and why it triggered such a public backlash when Anne stepped in. Camilla's decades-long drive. Camilla's journey to Queen Consort was a long and controversial one, from royal mistress to public acceptance to partner of the sovereign. But it didn't end at acceptance. In recent years, she quietly expanded her influence, from public engagements to behind-the-scenes protocol and family positioning. She asserted herself, sought heightened roles, and reworked traditions to reflect her presence. She didn't wait. She shaped her role, a palace insider confirmed. For Camilla, the crown wasn't enough. She wanted an equal place at its table. Behind the scenes, Camilla orchestrated subtle shifts. Seats shifted forward for her children and grandchildren. Event schedules expanded to give them a presence. She lobbied for advisory roles, especially for Tom Parker Bowles, to participate in heritage decisions. Invitations to major family events included her extended clan. These weren't mistakes. They were strategic moves designed to create a new royal landscape. She was positioning her family, a court aide explained, and the palace watched in silence. Her transformation was remarkable, from scandal survivor to palace power broker. She built trust among staff. She charmed circles. She blended public service with private influence, not overtly, not brutally, but steadily. And as the network grew, the structure shifted. She reshaped protocol around her family, one royal observer said. But in those shifts, old ceremony began to show cracks. And that's when Anne became alert. Camilla's new power wasn't wrong. It was a challenge. To structure, to tradition, to hierarchy. When her family name took up space, Anne felt the institution's boundaries being redrawn. It wasn't personal, it was procedural. And so, the moment of title omission wasn't shock, it was climax. Camilla's decades of drive demanded attention, and in that spotlight, tradition fought back. The question now, where will power land next? Clash over protocol. The tipping point wasn't a public event, it was a seating chart. Tom Parker Bowles, Camilla's son, was being quietly positioned into an advisory role. It started small: backstage involvement, heritage meetings, consults on royal estates. He wasn't pushing, but his mother was, said a former aide. Camilla wanted him seen, not just as her son, but as someone with royal weight. She also pressed for family priority. Camilla's relatives were offered elevated seating at state dinners, high visibility roles in national events, even proximity to the king at ceremonies. It wasn't declared. It was implied, inch by inch. She was shaping hierarchy through presence, one court observer explained. But protocol isn't about vibes, it's about rules. And that's when Anne stepped in. To Anne, this wasn't family favoritism. It was disorder. The monarchy to her survives through structure. Every role, seat, and honor has purpose. Deviating meant risk. She gave a quiet warning to Camilla. Carry the weight. Don't just wear the crown. It wasn't a threat. It was a standard. Anne doesn't bluff, a palace staffer confirmed, but Camilla didn't hear it as a line. She heard it as noise. Camilla underestimated what was at stake. She saw protocol as tradition, not law. But to Anne, it's the monarchy's spine. You can bend affection, said a senior courtier, but not the crown. Camilla continued pushing roles for her family. Anne didn't argue. She simply recorded it. And when the time came, she acted. The title omission wasn't sudden. It was a response. Sharp, silent, strategic. Anne warned, and Camilla pressed forward anyway. So Anne called a meeting. Off the books, out of the spotlight, away from London. Balmoral was chosen not for comfort, but control. Coming next, the secret summit, the evidence laid out, and the moment when three senior royals confronted each other with centuries of legacy hanging in the balance. This wasn't conversation. It was a royal reckoning. Balmoral Showdown. The royal weekend at Balmoral was pitched as tradition, family gathering, late summer retreat. But behind the scenes, it was a crisis summit. Anne sent the invitation herself. Formal, brief. Charles and Camilla arrived on Friday. Anne arrived early. No media, no press office, and no aides beyond the essentials. When Anne requests Balmoral, it's never casual. One royal assistant said it meant something serious was coming. Charles looked tired, slightly hunched, eyes weary. Camilla was composed but confident. Anne remained stone-faced. After a formal lunch, she asked for privacy. The three met in the drawing room, fire lit, documents already stacked on a side table. She brought proof, said a source. Seating charts, internal emails, protocol lists, all marked with red. Every deviation highlighted. Anne didn't raise her voice. She laid the papers out like a prosecutor. Here's where tradition was ignored. Here's where favoritism crept in. She didn't accuse Camilla directly, but the message was undeniable. Anne's tone was ice cold. One palace witness recalled, she didn't flinch. Camilla, though, began to crack. Her composure gave way to frustration. Why is this a crime? She asked. Anne didn't respond with emotion. Just a single word, continuity. Charles sat in silence, pulled between wife and sister. Camilla looked at him for support, but he didn't speak. That silence was louder than any speech. He was stuck, a family source said. His love for Camilla and his loyalty to the crown were at odds. Anne didn't wait for him to choose. She closed the folder, stood, and said, "The title is revoked, not by feeling, but by order." Then she walked out. The meeting was over, but the monarchy would never be the same. What happened in Balmoral was royal discipline in action. But its impact wasn't limited to private rooms. Days later, the protocol shift would go public. In a moment so subtle, yet so visible, it could only have been deliberate. On stage, at a royal gala, the Queen Consort would be introduced incorrectly. Coming up next, the fatal phrase, the stunned silence, and how one moment on camera changed everything. The fatal phrase. It was a royal gala, grand, polished, filled with velvet and diamonds. Guests arrived in black tie. The cameras rolled. The press noted every gown, every glance. But the biggest story wasn't visual. It was verbal. When the host introduced Camilla to the stage, he did so with a title drop. "Please welcome Her Royal Highness, the Duchess of Cornwall." Not Queen, just Duchess. One word changed everything. The silence was instant. No claps, no whispers, just confusion. "It was like someone unplugged the room," said one attendee. Camilla hesitated, just slightly, but it was enough. Her hand twitched. Her smile froze. Then, gracefully, she continued, but her voice had a tremble. "She felt the blow mid-sentence," noted a court reporter. The optics were undeniable. The camera angles were brutal. A close-up on her face captured the flicker of disbelief. Royal commentators went into overdrive. Was it a mistake? A protocol misread? Or something deeper? "That wasn't a fluke," one insider claimed. "That was Anne's work, plain and simple." The audience didn't know it yet, but they had just watched history shift in real time. The media called it the opera of optics, a moment where tradition, protocol, and power collided, all in a single line. "For once, protocol spoke louder than pomp," a royal analyst wrote, and the viewers agreed. Online reactions exploded. "She was just publicly demoted, and she knew it," one tweet read. The fatal phrase wasn't shouted. It was delivered gently, and that made it hit even harder. Camilla's breakdown. The gala was only the beginning. Back at Clarence House, the mask finally shattered. Camilla's staff heard the sound first, a slammed door, then glass breaking. "It was the vase," said one aide, "a gift from the king." Moments later, she was sobbing in the hallway, still in her formal gown. The public demotion had triggered something deeper than embarrassment. It was betrayal. She shouted at staff, not out of anger, but desperation. "How dare Anne humiliate me like this?" she reportedly cried. Her words were frantic, incoherent at times. Shouts echoed, "This was planned," and "Why didn't anyone warn me?" According to a palace insider, Camilla locked herself in her room for hours. The Queen Consort wasn't just shaken, she was unraveling. Her closest aides were stunned. They'd seen Camilla navigate press scandals, icy receptions, even Diana's shadow. But this was different. "She felt erased," one attendant whispered. She demanded to know who approved the script at the gala. Who allowed that title change? Who leaked it? Her questions turned into accusations, and silence followed. No one had answers she wanted to hear. Rumors began swirling in palace corridors. Was the title drop a coordinated move? Was Anne acting alone? Or was this a new chapter in royal enforcement? Staff began whispering. Lines were being drawn. "This wasn't just a slip," said one royal aide. "It was an operation." And at the center of it all, Camilla felt more alone than ever. As Camilla fell into silence and suspicion, Charles knew he couldn't remain passive. That night, he made the call to Anne. What followed was not a negotiation, but a confrontation between siblings bound by duty, but divided by power. Coming next, The king's desperate plea, Anne's unflinching reply, and the moment Charles realized he was no longer in charge of how history would remember him or his queen. Charles in crisis. It was just after midnight when Charles placed the call. The palace was quiet, but he couldn't sleep. Anne answered on the first ring. He didn't raise his voice, but he didn't hide his frustration. "You humiliated her," he said. Anne didn't argue. She replied coldly, "You crowned her queen. I crowned tradition." That was the tone. Icy. Final. The crisis had reached the king's doorstep. Charles asked her to reverse it. He pleaded, not as king, but as brother. "It was personal, Anne," he said. But she didn't budge. "No," she said firmly, "it was protocol." Anne viewed the title correction not as a punishment, but a restoration. "The institution needs discipline," she added. Charles fell silent. She didn't say it to hurt him, a family aide noted. She said it because the crown can't be compromised. Now Charles was stuck. If he defended Camilla publicly, he'd undermine Anne and the very structure he was born to uphold. If he stayed quiet, he'd risk Camilla's trust and her emotional stability. He was caught between the two strongest people in his life, one insider explained. It wasn't just about a title. It was about what kind of monarch he was willing to be. Meanwhile, William and Catherine remained silent. No statements, no calls, just quiet support sent through intermediaries. "Protect the crown, not personalities," was the reported message from Kensington. Charles read it clearly. His son wasn't just watching. He was choosing sides. And it wasn't Camilla's. "He's no longer just the heir," a court watcher said. "He's the balance of power." While Charles faced his own reckoning, William and Catherine had already made theirs. They didn't need to speak. They didn't need to protest. Their silence had become a signal, one louder than words. And behind closed doors, the palace began to shift. Coming up, the rise of the next generation, the quiet signals of support, and how the future king and queen are claiming power without ever saying a thing. William and Catherine's silent signal. In the wake of Camilla's public stumble, William and Catherine chose not to speak. But make no mistake, their silence wasn't indifference. It was alignment. "Silence is a stance," said a royal insider. Behind the scenes, they made it clear. No interference, no opposition, no sympathy. "Protect the crown, not personalities," was the private message passed to Charles. A message with weight and warning. They offered no protest against Anne's correction, no subtle outreach to Camilla, and their absence from follow-up events was noted. They stepped back, but deliberately, one aide explained. The couple's polished calm became a shield. They were unshaken, untouched, and that stillness spoke volumes. They didn't whisper support, a commentator noted. They gave it by staying out of the way. Within palace walls, that silence shaped new loyalties. Staff noticed how departments aligned. Camilla's team shrank. William and Catherine's circle grew. "The next generation is organizing," a senior planner observed. And it wasn't just symbolism, it was structure. Invitations, media coverage, and planning all began pointing in one direction. The monarchy wasn't collapsing, it was recalibrating. Kate's role became especially visible in her absence. At events where she might once have stood near Camilla, she now didn't appear, or if she did, she kept distance. "The look said more than words ever could," a press photographer commented. The Queen-in-Waiting had made her choice, and the message to Charles was crystal clear. The crown's future was moving, quietly, firmly, away from Camilla. Formal repercussions. The fallout became official, not with headlines, but with a memo. Inside palace walls, a document was circulated. All royal programs and event hosts were instructed to drop Queen Camilla from public reference. She would now be addressed formally only as the Duchess of Cornwall. No press release, no explanation, just an administrative change. "It wasn't debated. It was delivered," said a staff officer. And that silence hit louder than any correction. The change triggered ripples through royal planning. Printed invitations had to be reissued. Press briefing notes were revised. Event scripts rewritten. "It was sudden but not sloppy," said a communications director. There was precision in the erasure, like a surgical removal of a title too bold for its place. Behind every adjustment, one name loomed large: Princess Anne. A second internal note followed, one even more symbolic. Anne was to be acknowledged as the final authority on protocol for family-related engagements. That decision stunned even senior aides. "It's unprecedented," said one official. Anne just became the gatekeeper of tradition. The monarchy had recalibrated, and the balance shifted from emotional alliances to institutional control. Public confusion erupted. Reporters scrambled to confirm what had happened. Why had Camilla's name vanished from programs? Why had Anne emerged as the new enforcer? But no one from the palace spoke. "They're letting the silence speak," a royal analyst said. And the silence is saying, Camilla's chapter has ended. As protocols changed behind the scenes, the public began catching up. Headlines screamed of demotion, replays of the gala went viral, and polls shifted dramatically. But something else was unfolding: Anne's quiet triumph and a wave of unexpected support. The press that once questioned her reserve now praised her resolve. Next, how the press and the public responded, and why the Duchess was suddenly becoming the monarchy's most powerful voice. Public and press reactions. The moment Camilla's title vanished from public events, media outlets exploded. "Queen elevated, then dethroned. Live!" one tabloid blared. It wasn't just a story, it was a spectacle. Broadcast clips of her title being dropped were looped on national TV. Viewers rewatched her shocked expression. "This wasn't a correction," a commentator noted. "This was a royal retraction." Pundits filled talk shows with debate. Was this Anne saving the monarchy from scandal? Was it overdue justice for Diana? Or a ruthless overreach? "Anne acted like a general, not a princess," said one historian. And that tone caught on. Soon, a social media wave took over. Hashtags surged. #Team Anne, #Crown over comfort, and #Duchess again. Camilla's supporters were vocal, but they were now outnumbered. Polling backed the shift. Approval for Anne spiked to the highest in her public life. A YouGov poll showed 68% of respondents agreed that only direct bloodlines should hold high ceremonial titles. "The public has chosen clarity," a political journalist said. Meanwhile, Camilla's ratings dipped. Public sympathy was scarce. The Queen Consort title had come too fast, and now too late. Analysts called it a monarchy correction. "This is the institution correcting its course," said a royal historian. And it was happening in real time. The press, once skeptical of Anne's stiffness, now applauded her discipline. One headline captured the new mood: "The princess who saved the crown." The press had spoken, and the palace didn't argue. The headlines praised her. The public stood behind her. But what did this mean inside the royal walls? It meant power had shifted. Not to Camilla, not to Charles, but to Anne. What started as a protocol correction became a legacy-defining moment. Coming up, the internal shift, Charles's reckoning, and how Anne, without seeking it, became the most commanding figure in the Windsor family's power map. Legacy and internal power shift. Inside the palace, a new order had emerged, quietly but firmly. Anne, once overlooked, was now the institution's pillar. She became the monarchy's firewall, said a court insider. Her authority didn't come with new titles, it came from trust. She was now seen not just as Charles's sister, but as the royal family's protector. The one who would draw lines no one else dared. Camilla's influence collapsed almost overnight. Her requests began going unanswered. Scheduled engagements were reassigned or scaled down. She wasn't removed, one aide clarified. She was sidelined. Her attempt to modernize through her family had backfired, and what was left was an empty chair, one that no longer shaped the palace schedule. Charles faced a difficult reckoning. His vision of a shared rule had failed. He misread the monarchy's tolerance for reform, a royal analyst stated. He didn't lose the crown, but he lost control of its tone. With Anne's intervention, the monarchy didn't collapse. It recoiled. It chose structure over sentiment, and in doing so, it chose Anne's hand to steady it. Even William and Catherine took notice. Their public alignment with Anne sealed the shift. "This isn't Camilla's court anymore," said one commentator. "It's Anne's fortress, and William and Kate are its heirs." The monarchy wasn't just back on track. It was reforged in discipline, and that discipline came with a face. The stoic daughter of the Queen. With the palace transformed, the question now turns to the future. Will Camilla stay in the background or attempt a quiet comeback? Will Charles challenge the tide or surrender to it? And what will Anne do with the influence she never asked for, but now holds? Coming up, the final chapter, where the monarchy heads next, and why power in the palace is never inherited, it's taken. What comes next? Camilla has not spoken publicly since the title drop, but she's watching and plotting. Insiders say she's weighing options: retreat gracefully or slowly rebuild. She's bruised, not broken, a royal aide shared. Some say she may focus on personal charities. Others hint at a more tactical move, staying present, but out of protocol's line of fire. She knows the rules now, and she knows who enforces them. Charles remains torn. He hasn't reversed the changes. That silence, analysts say, is consent, but he hasn't endorsed them either. "He's buying time," said one commentator. His love for Camilla is strong, but his throne rests on public trust. And right now, Anne has that trust. If he pushes back, he risks more than scandal. He risks division. Anne holds the key to continuity. Whether she acts again or fades back into routine remains to be seen. But palace watchers agree. Her word is now policy. "She's the new standard," a former royal advisor said. "One who makes no speeches, but always speaks the loudest." The monarchy may be centuries old, but right now, Anne's voice is its sharpest. And William and Catherine? They are already positioning themselves, not as rebels, but as rightful heirs. Their silence was power. Their absence was strategy. Their next move will be watched closely. Because the new age of royalty isn't just about lineage, it's about leadership. And as one commentator wrote, power in the palace isn't inherited, it's claimed. And Anne just reminded everyone how it's done. Camilla now stands publicly diminished, privately shattered, and politically isolated. No press statement, no royal denial, just silence, and one powerful sister enforcing the crown's forgotten rules. Anne's move wasn't emotional, it was strategic. And as Camilla retreats, Charles hesitates, and William and Kate step forward without a word. One truth becomes impossible to ignore. In the new monarchy, power speaks quietly, and it wears a medal, not a tiara. The Queen Consort title may not be gone forever, but its meaning just changed, permanently.